What's up, guys? Nightingale here, and welcome back to the Adventurer's Black Book. Today, we're covering Azimanak 13 one-shot. Now, before we get started in the video, I do want to say this. If you have not watched this video right here, Intro to One-Shots, please watch this first. This is going to cover a lot of general information that I'm not going to cover inside this video. This is specific to Azimanak 13, where this is going to cover general information. So pause the video, watch that first, and then come back and finish this video here. Okay, cool. Welcome back. So, let's talk about Azimanak 13 one-shot. Now, the first thing I should probably say is this is probably one of the more annoying one-shots to do. 2, Strays technically makes this easier to deal with. Just by the way, his S3 works and Watcher Schuri's S3 works. So if you have Strays, it's a lot easier and a lot more consistent than this version. I don't have Strays, and even if I had Strays, I would be kind of beside myself that I waste Strays as a one-shot unit. But if you have Strays and you have no interest in using him for PvP, he's a great option here. You would replace, I think you replace Celestial Mercedes with it. I don't remember the exact run that they use for Strays and Watcher Schuri. But we're going to talk about the hard mode version. Well, or the more accessible version. This is probably what more of you will end up having to use. So, keep this in mind, that as long as this stays above roughly a 50% success rate, around 50-55, this is still technically faster at a 50% fail rate than you running this 21 times, assuming you have the 4-star pet, and it taking roughly 2 hours to run. It is still technically more successful, and you will get more runs in that amount of time. So keep that in mind. As long as it's working, but when it's not, it's kind of annoying. But there's a lot of RNG here, and you'll see why when we get to it. So let's jump in. We're going to start with the slowest unit, and we're going to go to the fastest unit first. So first thing to see here is Watcher Schuri is using his team imprint of speed, which this is going to be slightly important here in a little bit. You can technically use his crit rate self-imprint if you would like to, but with me, I would rather get the extra speed off in front to make sure that I am well out in front of the mobs on the first wave, and just to ensure that I have the speed to potentially make up some weird damage in Azi 13, just in case of, like, you miss a debuff in the beginning. So in this case, if it lands the defense break and cycles back around to Leo before Watcher Schuri takes his turn and he lands target, there's a fairly high chance that they did enough damage that he still will one-shot it. So that's also kind of why the speed's here. It's kind of like a little safe redundancy type thing, but this is not necessary, but it's just the way I was trying to get this hunt to stay a little more successful. So let's jump in. Now, Watcher Schuri is technically using my third worst rage set. And the reason being is because I decided to set mine up to, just since I will need the target, to go ahead, and if the target's not there, he's still not going to be able to do it. So it's going to fail anyway. But if you build yours well enough, better built than mine, you can still one-shot it, whether it's target or defense break. It's just you'll have to invest more into rage gear, and I wanted to get out of Azimanak as soon as possible on doing one-shots so I can move on to other things. So I didn't want to invest the resources and the time to building this up to where this can one-shot. But if you want to take the time to do it, it absolutely 100% can. Also, again, Strays will make this a lot easier if you have them and if you want to do that. So let's talk about his stats and see kind of where the benchmark is. So this is an average Watcher Schuri for Azimanak 13. This will do just fine. It has plenty of damage to kill it, and it's still good enough to even use in Katie's 13. So he's coming in at 3,619 attack. He's at 109 speed, so 3 off of base speed. Fine. You could technically use Hellcutter here, but I'm trying to get everything off on Daydream Jokers. He's at 91 crit chance, so keep this in mind. With Azimanak, he does have type advantage, so I technically don't need 100% crit rate here. He already has that due to elemental advantage. But if it's something that you really want to strive for, you can definitely get his self-imprint, and it will help out. So you will be able to free up some extra crit rate for crit damage or attack. And then he's got 296 crit damage. So this is still going to hit fairly hard. I'm not saying this is some weak Watcher Schuri, but this will definitely get the job done. Now, you can see here, mine is Friendship 9. So there's a reason for this, and it was part of my mentality when I was initially building the Azimanak 13 one-shot comp, was I was still in the mindset that I was going to probably bring mine over to bring him over to PvP. So therefore, my thought was I'll probably mola up his S2 and his S1 eventually as well. Well, now that I'm using him in KD's 13, I don't know if that's necessarily going to ever be the case, but I've got the option that the skill points are there, and this one doesn't matter to me. I'm okay if I never get my refund off of this. So, all you need for Watcher Schuri is his S3 leveled up. That's all you need for any of the one-shot stuff is just his S3. He has 100% defense penetration. This thing is stupid. Just get his max damage here, and he does really well. Again, if you happen to have crit rate issues, he does have the self-imprint, which will really help out. I'm going to use the speed, which you'll see why here in a little bit. Next up, we're going to talk about Celestial Mercedes. Now, as you can see, this already revolves around 2 ML4. So this is already naturally a little bit higher bar of entry, because now you not only have to have Watcher Schuri, you now have to have Celestial Mercedes. I still can't personally think of a replacement for Celestial Mercedes due to how her skills work, which we will cover here in just a second. But you will also need for her the Radiant Forever, which is a Hall of Trial artifact, and you could technically get more damage out of her if you level this up more. I'm trying to save as much Hall of Trial currency as I possibly can, just so that I can start working on other projects and not have to dump anything else into one shot. So if you're struggling around with some damage, you can definitely grab a lot out of that. This is technically better than Daydream Joker for her, so keep that in mind. Radiant Forever will be significantly better in this case scenario. So her stats are really nice for what she is. Now, you may not see that right away, but I will tell you this, that she and Vivian are taking a lot from me. This is where, when I say this hunt's very expensive, this took some of my best speed crit rate gear to make these units do what they're doing. She technically got the scraps because Vivian was technically more important. Also, I should say, you should also note that her awakening isn't even finished. And the reason is I'm actually nervous to fully awaken her because I don't want to mess up the rotation between Vivian and Celestial Mercedes. Someday, if I have spare gear, I might try this, but because this already cost me a lot in terms of gear, I don't necessarily want to play with that right now. But someday I may do that just to see what I can grab out of that extra 6% attack out of her. So if you decide to build yours up, start counting that in the beginning. So she's got 3,896 attack. She's 156 speed, which was enough to prevent Leo from lapping her. I had her a little bit slower, but Leo kept jumping out in front, which is not what I wanted. I do want to make sure she has 100% crit rate here because it is very vital that she does crit on wave 1 to help out Vivian, and it is very vital that she does crit on the when she goes to Azimanak, because this is where she's helping make up the damage for Watcher Schuri. That's Celestial Mercedes' role here, is to help burn off most of the HP so that Watcher Schuri can finish it off. And she's coming in at 277 crit damage. Now, I should go ahead and say this, because I know I'm staring at it, you're staring at it, we're all sitting here staring at it, and you're going, why on earth is there a blue piece leveled? Why? Okay, hear me out. Originally, this was +9, and it had 10 speed on it. Then I eventually said, screw it, I'm going to take it to +12 to see what the next stat was. Rolled crit chance. So when it came around to doing the hunt, I was like, I just want the extra defense, and maybe we'll get speed on it. Nope, we didn't. Unfortunately, it rolled crit damage. So I'll never reforge this, but hey, it was worth a shot to see if we maybe got extra speed, but we didn't. It failed. So that covers Celestial's Mercedes, but now let's talk about her skills, because this is important for the hunt. So the way Celestial Mercedes is going to work is S3 is going to go off first. This has no benefit unless you had technically her before Vivian, but in my case, Vivian goes first. because she attacks all enemies releasing spells of the last spell book, in which it would increase her attack for 2 turns. So this would technically help her out, but Vivian's already given her attack buff. And then it increases her combat readiness by 20% according to the number of critical hits made. So this will help push her back up in front to where her and where it'll go Leo, her, Vivian, or her, Vivian, Leo, depending on their speed RNG. So this one is basically to take half of the HP. Some people use her as the wave killer. That would require way too much gear for me to make her the wave killer. So in my case, I'm using this to take them half health. And then this is going to be your chip damage for the part of the one shot. So this is going to do what's going to take a good chunk of the HP off so that Watcher Schuri finishes it off. Now the big thing here is the reason why she's so valuable here is it attacks all enemies with a massive light sphere dealing damage proportional to the enemy's max health. So this will deal damage based off the Azimanak's max health, which is why that and Radiant Forever paired together does really, really well. She is a Friendship 10 unit, so you will want to make sure she's Friendship 10 because, again, she's only going to be used in hunts for the most part right now unless she gets some random buff. So Friendship 10 her first. I took the gamble because I actually would like to try to use Celestial Mercedes somewhere someday, but for right now she's a hunt unit. So but if you're not, Friendship 10 her. Next up, the next fastest unit is Vivian. Now Vivian is the most expensive unit I built in pretty much almost every hunt. Vivian took pretty much everything. So when it came down to Vivian, I needed Vivian absolutely cracked for this, which also interrupted my Banshee one-shot and made her too good for it. So I had to redesign Banshee one-shot around this Vivian. Now let's talk about the big thing here that you're going to need, just absolutely have to have. You need Time Matter. I tried getting this to work with so many other artifacts and it just doesn't play out right. So as annoying as this is, you really can't get started on Azimanak one-shot until you have this. And I'll show you why once we get into the hunt. But let's talk about Vivian's stats, and then we'll talk about her skills, and we'll go on from there. Also, I should probably say right now, this is the same exclusive equipment I've been using forever. It's the number 2 for the 50% combat readiness after she uses her S3. It's the same thing I've been using. Okay, so Vivian comes in with 3,611 attack. We've got her at 223 speed, so this is just fast enough that the mobs on the first wave will not take a turn before her, and she won't get speed RNG. She's got 89% crit chance. Now you can see that I'm missing a crit piece. I had to use this for, I think this was Sirmia ended up stealing this piece. So I had to. In order to get the hunt to work, I had to break the set, and Sirmia stole that. So she is on a broken set, so there is technically, right now, a little more chance of her to fail, because if she doesn't crit Wave 1 or in Wave 2... Well, Wave 2 I can kind of make up for. Wave 1, it fails if I don't crit in Wave 1. But the crit damage here, this is really what I was after, is I wanted to get enough damage between Celestial Mercedes and Vivian, that Watcher Schuri. I was trying to get it to where he could just do it on a defense break, but it's really, for me, it's not possible without really investing into his gear, which is something I don't want to do. So this is my Vivian, and now we're going to talk about her skills, which is right here. So this is my standard Vivian, and this is how I've been using her. I think this is actually since that first week I pulled her. We've got her skill cooldown up, which is fine. You don't really need that. The most important thing here is you will want Thunder God's Cry fully max leveled, because this is where all the damage that you're going to see for the hunt is going to come off of this. You can technically set up her S1, but for me, I don't want to mess with this because this would mess up my Banshee hunt, which if you watch that video, you'll understand why. I kind of go over that a little bit more in depth there for Banshee. But eventually, we'll work on trying to get this fully plus 15, but she's not a unit you need to worry about Friendship 10ing first, because she technically is a plus 15 unit. She's very, very worth having at plus 15. But for my hunts, I'm so gear starved right now because of how I had to do it. I could not take the gamble and potentially mess up speed RNG or anything like that to be able, something I could fix right now. So that's going to stay unleveled. So really, you don't even need this. If you have Vivian, you can technically just get this going because she shouldn't need to cycle her S3 again for this. But if you do, it's cheap. It's worth anyway. And last but not least is my Leo. So Leo is right here. And let's talk about Leo first before we talk about his stats. Let's talk about Leo in general. Now, for Azimanak 13, I have to have the attack imprint because I need the most amount of damage possible coming off of Watcher Schuri. You will need Song of Stars, unfortunately. Or you will need to find some way of applying target to Azimanak with a defense break. Now, this is the annoying part, is I cannot tell you how many times he will defense break and not target, or just the opposite, he will only target and not defense break. You can recover with this current build, you can recover if you defense break, but it is burnt, it is done, the run is dead if he does not land the defense break first. So if it's just target, it's done. If it's defense break, it can recover. So let's talk about his stats first. Attack does not matter here. He does not need it. He is 135 speed, but he's roughly around 145 fully reforged. I felt like that was going to be too fast, especially between Azzy 13 and Banshee 13. I felt like this was going to be a little too fast, so I just left him at 135 and finished it off. Somehow, miraculously, he has a 93% crit chance, so he is probably going to crit, and even without the imprint, he's still at over 100% effectiveness. Now, you can technically get your Song of Stars more reliable if you level this up, but for the most part, it's not that fails, it's the defense break, because 15% exists. So, as I pointed out in the last video, yes, you can see the turd in the punch bowl right here. I did not wait, so he will forever be stuck at this. Plus, I thought maybe I might level this up someday, but nope, that's never going to happen. All you need to do is level Leo up to +4 just to get the decreased defense chance up. So this will need to be done. Friendship 10 him first. You don't need the damage. It's really, really not worth. So let's jump in and walk you through step by step what's going to happen now inside of Azimanak 13. Okay, so I had to cut this because it had some weird technical difficulties and we're just redoing the whole fight. So that's the weird break in this. Okay, so let's start off and we're going to explain the full hunt all the way through.
Go, go, go!
So, turn 1, let's show you this. So here's the combat readiness bar. Leo, Vivian are pretty tight to this guy up here. Not enough to completely speed RNG them, but without Watcher Schuri's imprint, they would potentially be up for beating them in speed. They would typically go first, but there would be a chance that they don't, and I don't want that. I want Vivian and Leo first. Reason being is Leo has a stun, which can save some damage on some units, because in theory, this is actually the first place you could fail a run. If Leo or Watcher Schuri takes too much damage in this phase, game over. And you'll see why in just a minute. So Leo's got one job, and that's to use his S3 right here. Please stun them so we can move forward. All right, we got one of the 2 stuns. So now next up is Vivian going to grant immunity so that there's no extra poisons applied, because the poison ticks are lethal if they get stacked up too much on one unit. But we can take a single hit. It's not a big issue. Then Celestial Mercedes is going to use her S3, which is basically, as you can see, it's to weaken them a good bit, but not all the way. This is where I said you could technically build Celestial Mercedes stronger. Radiant Forever would kind of help out here. Actually, I think Daydream Joker's technically better in this area than Radiant Forever, but Radiant Forever's better on Azimanak. So Vivian will now, because of Time Matter, she will reset her S2 because we need it literally in the next fight, and it will be able to flush this. So there comes the first strike, and the second strike finishes it off. So now with Time Matter, there we go. We now have Thunder God's Cry back. So now let's move into Azimanak. Now this is why I say this is kind of why you don't want to take as much damage as you can here, because Azimanak's going to come in and immediately smack you right here, and if your units took too much health as you can see, Vivian's hanging on by a thread. You can die. All right, so let's talk about the mechanics here, and then we'll continue on. So as you notice that there are 2 new mobs now up in front, number 2 and number 3. So the little spawns, they need to die in order to take off that debuff, or off this defense buff, since it's unstrippable. Well, thankfully, Vivian has her Thunder God's Cry up, which will definitely kill this. Celestial Mercedes could also technically do this, but we want the defense buff off for Celestial Mercedes to be able to do the most damage. Now, here is failure potential number 2. If Leo does not land defense break here, it is game over. Now, I will say this, that with my current build, if I don't land target here, it's also going to be game over. Well, not necessarily game over. It's technically not a one-shot anymore, because Watcher Schuri will not one-shot. Vivian will have enough speed to finish it off. But we, without target right now with Watcher Schuri's current build, he will not actually one-shot. So we need target and the defense break here. If not, it's game over.
How about this?
And there we go. We've got both. It's over. So Vivian will now clean this up very, very quickly.
How dare you?
So the target will ensure extra damage. Now this is what Celestial Mercedes is here for. This, to use her S2, this is where you're going to get the bulk of the damage taken off so that Watcher Schuri finishes this off. All nice and clean. And he can kill Vivian. It should not matter. Instead, he's going to hit Watcher Schuri. That's fine. Now, this is the cool thing is if your Watcher Shuri's built well enough, Leo can still save the run right here with my current build because he has another chance to apply target. So we get resisted here. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Vivian will take her S3 here again because it's going to be on auto, so she'll cycle this. Which is not needed. Watcher Schuri still has his attack buff at that point, and now it's up to Watcher Schuri to absolutely clap this with his S3. So keep in mind, the defense break is absolutely void here because he's already 100% pinning the defense, which is the only thing that matters here is the target buff. But if you can get the rage set to activate with just a defense break, and you've got enough juice in it, you can one-shot the Azimanak. So here you go for a successful run.
I won't miss.
Dead. So, I can tell you from my current build to the last build I had, he's only 1,000 damage off from being able to do what he was doing if I didn't have the defense break initially, or the target initially. So, that's just really the reforge of the necklace would probably fix that and getting one piece slightly better. It's really not, I'm not that far off of where he originally was. So, my final thoughts on this is I want out of this hunt as soon as possible. I don't find a lot of value in it anymore currently. Hopefully that changes and something will come along which will make immunity to me a lot more valuable. But with everything stripping right now, I don't find a ton of value in it. But as far as the hunt, this is really advantageous when you have hunt buffs. If you don't have hunt buffs, you don't need to one-shot this. But while the buffs are up and you're trying to get the maximum amount of runs in that you can during those days, then yes, having the one-shot cop ready is absolutely worth, if not just normal farm this during the week. It's really not worth this. So if you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.